Hey guys, MrPokke here, back with another video, and on today's episode of CN Unit Analysis, we are going to be taking a look at the latest 5-star break support Fugue, and I believe that she has caused a lot of waves, a lot of questions, doubts, whether she should be putting for her, who does she replace for Harmony Trailblazer, who is the best break DPS, and yeah, I'm glad to kind of show the responses from the CN community, specifically what they think of Fugue with regards to her synergy with Harmony Trailblazer and Rame, who do replace between the three of them, and what are the best break DPSs in their opinion, right? So without further ado, let's get into today's content.
Subscribe!
So for Fugue specifically, a lot of the stuff in the CN guide for this one is actually gonna be quite similar to what I've really experienced in the Creator Access. I think for my Fugue's Creator Access video, the Early Access review, it is one of, if not the most detailed guide I've ever done in a Creator Access. So feel free to check it out. I've went through very in-depth as to how do you build her team comps, sustainless teams, how does she benefit different big DPSs, interesting dance combinations. So I highly recommend you guys to check out the original Early Access review first. So for this specific video, I want to just bring a little bit more of an insight as to what they think of Fugue's replacements for team comps, right? The team comps are going to be the main objective of this specific video. So just a quick little summary for Fugue. Between the three break DPSs, namely Rappa, Firefly, and Boothill, Rappa is going to be the one that stands to gain the extremely high amount of benefit from Fugue, specifically because of the number of charge stacks you're gaining, the energy regeneration, as well as the additional action value delay, right? So she's basically one, if not Rappa's best in slot supports. You can kind of view this as like Jiao Qiu support to an Acheron, or a Sunday support to an Jingyuan. Fugue is extremely synergistic with Rappa, and in CN opinion, she is going to be an extremely strong tier 0 DPS break unit, right? So that's going to be that. Between the other two break DPS, although Firefly and Boothill still got a pretty decent buff, right? Boothill gets additional pocket trick shots, and Firefly, especially E2 Firefly, you can trigger the passive a little bit better. They are nowhere near as close to Rappa in terms of the overall performance that you're going to be getting, right? Specifically, if you're going to be using Fugue in a, for example, pure friction, when you give the skill buff to a support Lingsha, like I mentioned in my early access, you want to give this skill buff from Fugue to namely either Lingsha or Harmony Trailblazer instead of the main DPS, so that you can let them deal more toughness damage. And this will result in Fugue improving the overall AoE damaging abilities for your entire team. So you can kind of replace Lingsha with Gallagher over here to kind of achieve similar results, right? If you want to replace Fugue, which is basically take out Fugue and just run Lingsha or Gallagher, you can kind of just exchange damage for additional survivability. So that is going to be up to your personal preference. And then for players that want to run all three units in the same team, that's going to be Fugue, Harmony Trailblazer, as well as Rame. Definitely feel free to do so, especially the Infinite Fugue plus Harmony Trailblazer dun spam combination. And then you can kind of run like a main DPS link shot. That's to make your team very comfortable, and they should be able to, you know, sustain through most, if not every single content. If you want to take out Lingsha and run them with any of the break DPSs, the content should still be very comfy because of the way break team work as a sustainless. For the eidolon recommendations, it is recommended to pull for E1 first before getting the E2, and only after E2 should you guys be thinking about getting this Signature Lightcone 1. Like I mentioned in my own video, Signature Lightcone 1 for Fugue is really not that impactful because Resolution Lightcone is an excellent alternative, right, in terms of opportunity cost. So E1 is a lot more significant, especially with the 50% witness rate efficiency. If you do get Fugue's E2, that is going to be a team-wide dance, we can simultaneously trigger with your Harmony Trailblazer, or if you give it to Rame, right? So solitary healing, specific of pure vision, like my early access as well. If you do get a break with Fugue, you can get the break DOT, which is going to be a burn, so you can still get a couple of energy when you play pure friction. So a pretty decent alternative, but specifically for pure friction, right? Aside from that, almost every single time you are going to be running resolution as an alternative. Then otherwise, depending on the scenarios, you can run the tutorial Lightcone if you have defense down, or the solitary healing, right? And then for your relics, in summary, 4-piece Cavalry and 2-piece Calbagini, or 4-piece Teeth and 2-piece Talia. Either of these are going to be excellent for Fugue, just to hit your break effect thresholds as well as speed thresholds, right? Then for your main stats, you are going to be getting for the EHR body, speed boots, HP or defensive sphere, as well as the break effect or energy regeneration rope. CN here didn't really mention energy regeneration, but like I mentioned in my early access review, I do believe that under most scenarios, especially if your Fugue has enough break effect, you should be trying to go for energy regeneration rope, just because Fugue doesn't gain a lot of benefits from stacking an incredible amount of break effect. Whereas if you can get the energy, especially if you get multiple eidolons, all the kind of stuff, energy regeneration will give you a much higher benefit. So I'll leave that up to you guys to determine if you want break effect or energy regeneration. In summary, if you want to play a break DPS for Fugue, then Fugue is going to be a must pull unit for pretty much any of the break team. But CN is not too sure how much will the HP inflation be in version 3.0, or how will the enemy environment change in relation to the break teams going forward, right? Because they should be placing a higher emphasis on summon DPS, so we will have to wait and see as to whether break team can survive the meta change, right? So that is going to be for the future, but for now, as long as you want to play break team, then feel free to pull for Fugue. If you're not confident that break team will do very well in version 3, then you can consider getting her on a rerun just to see how break team is going to stabilize in version 3 going forward. For players that are already hyper invested into their break team, for example, an E2 S1 Firefly, Lingsha and all that, then getting a E0 S0 Fugue is a very low cost investment to make your break team substantially stronger. If you can accept not running a sustain, which is going to be the quote-unquote sustainless team with Harmony Trailblazer, then running Fugue with Rame and HMC is going to be an excellent pick for pretty much almost every single break DPS as well. Like I mentioned, the Fugue's talents, Fugue's kits, Fugue's abilities, how do you synergize specific break build points, how the talent work, how exo-toughness work. Kindly check out the early access review. I went very in-depth to explain how her entire kit works, so feel free to go ahead and check that out. And I'm just gonna skip through this entire portion and jump straight into the relevant and useful information you guys are looking for. In summary, for Fugue specifically, this can be the buffs that she will be offering to your entire team. 18% defense down, 100% super break multiplier, team-wide 36% break effect, single target an additional 30% break effect, as well as the exo-toughness, which is roughly 50% of your break damage. And then in terms of the other mechanics, you can kind of see her as a minimal amount of fire toughness bar damage from her enhanced basic attack as well as her ultimate. Specifically with her ultimate, you do have a team-wide ignore toughness for the entire team, so that's pretty strong. And then if you are going to be using Fugue skill for whichever your character you're going to be using for Harmony Trailblazer or Lingsha, most of the time you will be able to ignore their weakness typing at 50% efficiency. So the additional exo toughness is going to be benefiting pretty much every single one of your break DPS. In some of the people that didn't include is going to be Himiko, Xueyi, or even Lingsha herself, right? As well as this additional 15% action value delay, which is going to help us make the sustainless team in break teams a lot more feasible. After summarizing the benefits that Fugue is going to be about, it is basically how does she compare with our quote-unquote other break supports? Can she replace any of them, or rather who would she be able to synergize with the most, right? So if you can only pick 2 of the 3, which one should you pick? So that is going to be for Fugue summary. For Harmony Trailblazer, she's going to give us a 120 to 160% super break additional multiplier, 60 to 70% team-wide break effect, 30% action value delay, which is exactly the same as Fugue, as well as extremely strong single target imaginary toughness bar damage, right? So this will be very good, especially for environments in Memory of Chaos or in your Pokke Shadows, where you want to deal toughness bar damage to a guy with imaginary weakness. That is something that Harmony MC can do that Fugue can't really replace, and you might be able to see quite a lot of value here, especially if you want to break them as soon as humanly possible. Then moving on to Rame, she does give us 50% weakness break efficiency, 25% res down, 20% break effect, 10% team-wide speed, additional 40% action value delay, as well as a 50% additional ice break damage. So comparing Fugue with all 3 break supports, you can kind of see this as this. Fugue is somebody that provides us with the super break damage, as well as being pretty good, especially against AoE target scenarios, right? If you have a lot of different enemies, not only do you get a lot of benefits since all of them will have exo toughness, so you can basically break all of them twice. Her own ultimate also gains a higher number of targets, which means she technically deals more toughness bar damage by herself. So the higher the number of enemies, the better Fugue will become. For Harmony Trailblazer specifically, she's actually a little bit better against single target that are going to be weak to imaginary, and after you break the target with Harmony Trailblazer, you can then scale better either through with dance or making sure your other super break damage DPS can continue dealing their damage output. For Rame, her main goal is basically the 50% break efficiency unless you pull for the E1 Fugue, and that is going to be her highest selling point. But on the flip side, her personal break damage is going to be the lowest compared to Harmony Trailblazer as well as Fugue, right? So these 3 are going to be the pros and cons, and we can kind of see in the environment if we want to compare all of them with one another. So in this current scenario, we can kind of just calculate this pacing of a Firefly, right? So they're going to use this example as a E0 S1 Firefly with a 320% break effect in in battle. Using the Ranmei and Honey Trailblazer as the standard comparison, you can see this as the damage composition if you want to use Fugue as a replacement. If you were to use Fugue to replace Harmony Trailblazer, you can see that the break damage, the original break, is gonna be increased by 11.32%, but the super break damage actually goes down by roughly 11.2%. And then on the flip side, if you're to replace Ranmei with Fugue, you are going to be receiving a very minimal dip in the original break damage, but a much higher 15% increase in super break damage. So this graph perfectly aligns with my initial assessment, the early access review, which is for Firefly as an example, Fugue plus Harmony MC unironically deals more damage than Ranmei plus Harmony MC. But of course, this is gonna be not considering how fast it takes for you guys to break the target, because for both Harmony MC and Fugue, they do not have the 50% witness break efficiency. So for scenarios like Memory of Chaos, where you want to just deal the absolute highest amount of damage possible, most of the time you will be running Harmony Trailblazer as well as Fugue in the same team and replacing Ranmei out, assuming you're not going to be running any sustain. But of course, there are going to be different scenarios where you actually wouldn't want this every single time, because for environments like Apocalyptic Shadows, witness break efficiency actually has a much higher value, because in Apoc Shadows, the faster you break the target, then the faster you get the bars from Apoc Shadows, as well as dealing much higher damage, right? Whereas for Memory of Chaos, the enemies already break pretty fast by themselves, but they have a ridiculously high health pool with regards to HP inflation in Memory of Chaos, right? So it really depends on the environment, but generally speaking, for Apoc Shadows, you probably still want Ranmei's 50% witness break efficiency, but for content like Memory of Chaos or maybe even Pure Friction, you might want to consider running Harmony Trailblazer with Fugue, right? After all that, it's gonna come down to the question of what if you ran all three of them in the same team, which is you're sacrificing the sustain slot. So in this current format, if you were to run, for example, Harmony Trailblazer, Fugue, as well as Lingsha, and if you were to replace Lingsha out for Ranmei, you can see that the damage goes up substantially. Right, your super break damage in this scenario, if you were to include a Ranmei, Harmony Trailblazer, and Fugue, it will go up to a whopping 192.11%. Whereas for this scenario, if you were to take out Ranmei, unfortunately, you're not going to be doing too much, because you lose the witness break efficiency, you lose the rest pen, and all the kind of stuff, right? So generally speaking, if you can run this sustainless team, which honestly, like I mentioned before, it is not a very hard thing to do considering the number of action value delay, the number of defensive main stats, the number of Danzazan's triggers. Sustainless team for specifically a break R-type is not that scary, and I highly recommend players to try out for themselves, because it's honestly very, very fun, right? So this will be basically the best in slot team if you can stand the idea of not having any sustain. So in summary, so this is just gonna be a example for DPS, right? For any break DPS, if you were to run them with all three break supports, you will get a 50% witness break efficiency, 25% rest down, 200% super break damage multiplier, 18% defense ignore, super strong action value improvement because of the Harmony Trailblazer's Danzanzans, as well as the action value delay from the respective Harmony Trailblazer as well as Fugue, and also ignoring the witness typing pretty much almost 100% of the time. Whether you boot heal, whether are you Firefly or Rapper, they can all pretty much go against elements which are not going to be favorable for their original element, right? So all of these buffs combined, which is going to be forming the archetype of basically taking all break DPS to the next level, especially with Fugue. On top of that, we also have one of, if not the strongest 4-piece effect for break teams, which is going to be the 4-piece Iron Cavalry, giving us a 25% defense ignored for super break damage, right? So very, very good synergy for pretty much any break DPS right now in Honkai Starbucks before going into version 3. So this portion, it is essentially the repeat of what I mentioned earlier, which is going to be running them with a sustainless team. And why sustainless team for break works exceptionally well, defensive substacks, action value delay, all that. So I won't repeat here. Feel free to check out a further explanation in the early access review. Now, a quick little segment with regards to how Fugue places with the respective break DPSs. So because of the way Fugue works, she doesn't really have a problem of running out of buffs, because as long as she stays on field, you will basically permanently always get exo-toughness, super break, the action value delay, and all that. So she really is not that concerned with whether her skill will have a downtime or not. Generally speaking, it is a completely 100% buff up time, and this specifically benefits Rappa a lot. And for this CN content creator, he basically dedicated this entire portion as to how much benefits Rappa actually gets from Fugue. It is basically 量身定做, which is basically custom made. It's almost as if Fugue is a custom made support for Rappa specifically, because every single mechanic that Rappa has, Fugue basically amplifies it to the highest degree. It solves your energy regeneration problem. Even for players without signature light cone, it solves a lot of the energy regeneration problem. Turn 1, run, make the world tremor, which is going to be the survival light cone, and you pretty much won't have any energy problems, especially if you're up against pure fission content or memory of chaos with a lot of enemies, right? Additional charges deals more damage, action really delay, all the kind of stuff. She basically stands the most, and almost every single time you will gain up to 10 points of charge. So on top of this, combined with the fact that Fugue's ultimate also ignores any of the elements typing, it helps us deal an AoE toughness bar reduction, which makes it even easier for units like Rappa to deal the AoE basic attack to basically deal the break damage and enable super break. So no matter what, after getting Fugue, Rappa's current standing in terms of strength, especially amongst all the break DPSs, it is gonna be far beyond solidified at tier 0 DPS, right? So extremely strong, just like how Jiao Qiu has an Acheron as well as Sunday with a Jingyuan. Then another character that stands to gain a lot from Fugue is not really gonna be Firefly, nor is it gonna be Blue Hill, but it's unironically gonna be Harmony Trailblazer. Which, like I mentioned as well, because of the combination of Harmony Trailblazer and Fugue, he can basically deal a absurd amount of dance because you do get 11 energy every single time you break. So every single time you do get this exo-toughness, that's gonna be 22 energy. Couple this with energy regeneration roll with a 4-piece ego, you are gonna be one of the strongest spammers of dance. And dance is gonna be one of the best light cones in Honkai Starbucks because it is a team-wide 24% action value advance. And Harmony Trailblazer, as you guys can see from the footage by the time this video goes up, you can basically spam this dance once, twice, 3 times, even 4 times in a single turn before his turn even begins, especially in the content like Pure Fission. It is absolutely diabolical, extremely fun, and I highly recommend you guys to try this out for yourself. So in CN's opinion, this is going to be the second best beneficiaries for Fugue. In fact, just like how Pridewind listed Harmony Trailblazer with Fugue in the same placing, I believe that if you were to use both of them in the same team, the performance is absolutely ridiculous, especially for Pure Fission, right? So go ahead and try them out yourself if you want to see this, right? They literally compare Harmony Trailblazer to a mini Babin. So it's not even a mini Babin, it is a big Babin. It is literally better than Robin in Pure Fission because you literally get so many procs of dance, right? So very powerful ally. Aside from Rappa and Harmony Trailblazer, we can kind of talk about the other breed DPSs. So for Firefly specifically, it doesn't really have a lot of synergy unless you get Firefly's E2, because basically for Firefly, you just deal one more instance of break damage. That is basically it. There's no charge, there's no pocket trick shot, there's no additional mechanics, no additional energy. It is just a very simple additional instance of break damage. Only if you get an E2 Firefly, then it does give her the ability to trigger the E2 much easier. In CN's opinion, the value for Fugue that brings to Firefly is not necessarily bring her or take her to the next level. It is more so as a improving slightly to her ceiling, because for Harmony Trailblazer, which has been one of Firefly's best supports by now, Firefly without Harmony Trailblazer deals substantially less damage, right? Harmony Trailblazer caps out at E6. So if you were to get Fugue, especially if you were to get Fugue's E1, E2, dance, all these will drastically improve Firefly's ceiling. But this point can also be said for Rappa and pretty much any other break DPS. So that is going to be that for Firefly in terms of synergy. And if you want to talk about the next DPS, that is going to be Blue Hill. You can essentially gain 3 stacks of Pocket Trick Shot instantly, as you can see from this over here. Breaking the mob, killing the mob, as well as triggering the exo-toughness will give you 3 stacks instantly, which means that Blue Hill's amp up time is going to be a lot faster. So this can be for Memory of Chaos, and this can be for Apocalypse Shadows. For Pure Vision, Blue Hill still has a bit of a problem with regards to directing his targets to multiple different enemies, because after all, she is still going to be a single target, right? Blue Hill also substantially goes up in damage if you unlock Fugue's E1, because it basically allows him to one-shot any elite we have in the game from their 100 toughness bar all the way down to 0. So with that out of the way, after talking about Fugue synergy, these are gonna be the CN community's pooling opinions as to who should pool for Fugue, right? So one very important factor as to determine whether she'll be pulling for Fugue, not only is it gonna be just Fugue's personal value, it will also greatly depend on where that DPS stands after you pull for Fugue, right? So it's not just Fugue alone, you need to factor in which DPS is gonna be the one getting the benefits from Fugue itself, right? So is it worth it to pull Fugue to make them stronger. So that is going to be a very important. It's kind of like, should we be pulling Sunday for Jingyuan? Or should you be pulling Jingyuan for Sunday? And especially in version 3 when Eglia comes out, where is Jingyuan going to be stand going forward, right? Another example that I mentioned instead of the Jingyuan and Sunday scenario is going to be Spark over here, right? Even though Sparkle comes out, she benefits a lot for Scylla, but Scylla's personal damage as well as multiplier, she has fallen off by quite a bit, so it is kind of not worth it to pull Sparkle just for Scylla. And at that point, when Sparkle's first launch, a lot of people were basically pulling for the Invisibility, right? And at this point, you kind of see Sunday already power crap Sparkle because it is what it is, right? So definitely you need to factor in not just the support's value, but also the DPS value you are going to be pulling Fugue for. So with that out of the way, let's just talk about who should be investing, who should be pulling for Fugue. If you already have a Ruan main, then even if you don't consider a specific break DPS, Ruan main, Harmony Trailblazer with Lingsha, it is a team that can actually function in all 3 endgame content. APOC, Pure Fiction, and Memory of Chaos. You can basically get a full 3-star clear running this exact same team. So if you already invested in a Lingsha plus a Ruan back then, without a break DPS, Fugue still can be a pretty decent upgrade. But the actual damage increase, it might not be the strongest compared to some of the other DPS, because at the end of the day, even though Lingsha does a lot of damage, she's still fundamentally a healer, so she might not deal as much damage compared to some of our other DPS, right? However, if you did pull for Lingsha as well as Fugue Signature Light Cone, they can actually both stack on very, very well, especially if you to stack on a E1 S1 Fugue. Then this team is going to be a very, very solid contender, even if you don't have any break DPS, right? And then talking about the break DPS themselves, for Rappa, in CN's opinion, holy shit, Vindication. I did not pre-watch this, by the way, when I made the Pride tier list video. But anyways, yeah, in Zen's opinion, if you were to pull for Fugue with Rappa, it already outperforms Firefly. So yeah, it is what it is. So Rappa is currently the strongest break DPS in the entire game of Honkai Starbucks. This performance is completely in the Rappa main's expectations because we already know how strong Rappa seeks to gain back in version 2.5. Exo-toughness into she was absolutely diabolical, and you know, to nobody's surprise, she's gonna be the tier 0 DPS. And if you don't like this claim, then it is what it is, right? So for Rappa mains, definitely without a shadow of a doubt, pull her, just like how Jingyuan mains should be pulling for Sunday, Akron mains should be pulling for Jiaoqiu, right? If you want to pull this specifically for Pure Fiction, it is not necessary because Rappa is already performing extremely well in Pure Fiction. So even without Fugue, Rappa can still perform, especially with the brand new Pure Fiction update. It's actually gotten a lot easier, right? So this is specifically for APOC Shadows as well as Memory of Chaos. So 0+0 for Rappa, best value. You don't really need to consider. If you want to invest more, then E1 Fugue into E2 Fugue or into E2 S1 would be your terms of upgrade, right? So that is going to be that for Rappa. Whether you pull for E2 S0 or E1 S1, it will be based on this. For APOC Shadow as well, Pure Fiction, E2 S0 is going to be, in their opinion, better. Then E1 S1 is going to be more generalized for Memory of Chaos, especially with the HP inflation. S1 does give you a higher damage amplification because at the end of the day, E2 doesn't give you any damage amplification. It is just a Duns. And if you can't use your Duns, then you don't really gain the benefits, especially in Memory of Chaos, where you can't gain a lot of energy in the first place, right? So that's going to be that. Then for Sunday, it definitely depends on your scenario, because currently, there might be scenarios where with a Harmony Trailblazer and Firefly going forward, if the minions are not going to be dead, you're still missing a bit of damage after your initial break and super break, it will be in a very awkward scenario where you can't do anything, right? And this wouldn't be too uncommon going forward, especially due to HP inflation. So if you want to, you know, not get into a scenario where you left them with a little bit of HP and they recover the toughness bar and they don't die, then you have to waste a lot of time just trying to break them, right? So it will definitely depend on the environment for Firefly mains, especially for an E0 Firefly. If you can accept not running a sustain, so a sustainer team that is Ruan, Fugue, and Harmony Trailblazer for Firefly, then that is going to be an excellent suggestion for players that want to bring their Firefly's total damage ceiling to the next level, not just a Firefly, but also your entire team, right? So E0, S0, exactly the same. If you do not want to run a sustainers team, then frankly speaking, sticking with this original team would still be not too shabby, right? On the other hand, if you do have a E2 Firefly, then the value definitely goes up by quite a lot compared to an E0 Firefly, because now you basically trigger this additional turn almost every single time due to exo-toughness. So it would be pretty recommended to get a E0 S0 Fugue or even an E1, E2 Fugue for your E2 Firefly, just to completely take us to the next level and you basically just future-proof your girlfriend and can just kind of take her to any content and she will still perform, right? So that's gonna be up to you guys. For Boot Hill players, especially for Boot Hill players that already have an E1, S1, and you want to drastically improve his performance in Realm of Chaos as well as a Pokke with Shadows, then you can consider getting a E0 S0 Fugue. Alright, other than that, doesn't really change anything for him in pure fiction because Boot Hill is just a Boot Hill for 100, right? So it is what it is. For players that do not have Ruan main, so especially for new players that just started out playing Honkai Starbucks this patch or last patch, you pull for Rappa, you didn't pull for Rame, then getting a E1 Azure Fugue would be very, very recommended for pretty much any DPS because this is basically a built-in Rame. Rame gives you a team-wide witness rate efficiency, but really the main beneficiary for this is going to be your main DPS, right? Although Harmony MC doesn't really get this anymore, but it will still be a very, very good side grade for all of your big DPSs. This is Rappa, Firefly, Boot Hill, as well as your Super Big Himeko and honkaistarrail. So for players without Rame, getting E1 Azure Fugue would be highly, highly recommended. Aside from this is going to be purely speculation, which is in version 3, we are going to be getting Remembrance MC. We don't know how strong Remembrance MC is going to be, but if we are going to be seeing how MiHoYo pivots into summon meta, just seeing how, they pivoted into follow-up meta with facial, Remembrance MC becomes a very strong thing, summon meta become a very strong thing. It would depend on which two teams did you dedicate before version 3. So for example, right now, the most popular teams in CN, it is going to be Break Team as well as follow-up. So if you already invested in a Break Team 1 as well as a follow-up Team 2, then getting a version 3 team means you would have to sacrifice one team for summon meta. That will be depending on who you prefer, whether will you prefer to continue using summons or whether prefer using break, right? If you do not want to give up on break, then it will be highly recommended to get a E0 S0 Fugue just so that you can use summon plus break and then you can dedicate your Harmony MC to Remembrance MC. Alright, so if you already dedicated a lot into the follow-up team instead, then you don't really need to consider Fugue anymore because your follow-up team with Facial, Barbin, all the kind of stuff, and then your team 2 with Summon with Remembrance MC and Sunday is going to be completely fine, right? So it really depends on what are you going for in version 3. For players that are going to be, just want to have a bit of fun, especially for Rappa mains, you do get the value of Fugue for this version as well as version 3 itself because it's going to be Big Herta and Igleia. So Rappa, unless Super Break completely goes out on meta, you can still get a pretty good amount of value for the next two versions, right? So that's going to be that. At this point, that will basically be almost majority of the information I'll have to offer. Everything else in terms of the light cone value, in terms of the gearing, what relics you use, means that it is pretty much more or less exactly the same as I mentioned in the early stage review. So I'll just summarize this extremely quickly for a comparison. So at this point, everything else is basically roughly revolves the same as what I did for my early stage review. How do you build Fugue in your team building? Should you run him sustainless, not sustainless? Who do you use for light cones, eidolons, the best benefits, E1 over S1, etc. I don't really want to repeat them over here. It's essentially the exact same thing. And the most important scenarios I've really kind of listed out, right? So probably the biggest questions you guys are wondering with regards to Fugue are your pooling opinions, her synergies with other break DPSs, as well as her comparison with our other break supports, right? So at this point, we will have come to the end of our CN unit analysis. Let me know what you guys think of Fugue when you guys have pulled her by the time this video goes up. Merry Christmas. Hope this is not Happy New Year yet. Word of the day is gonna be tier lists. Join Twitch, join YouTube, join Discord, join Twitter, all the best for gacha boosts. I'll see you guys next time. Take care.